Hi, this is Karen Knutson. We're sitting here with our Peter Heffering at the Tara Hills Stud office in Port Perry, Ontario. We're concluding our final series of our discussion with Pete of his experience over the years and where he is now. We're going to wrap up the dairy cattle chat on this interview with one last question about embryos. Did you market them in the Hanover Hill days, and if so, why or why not?
Well, we made a lot of use of embryos, particularly out of our own brood cows for our own purposes, and as a marketing tool for live animals. We would flush. We would produce probably at least around 100 live heifer calves a year, as well as some bulls, and with the idea of marketing live cattle. We didn't buy many embryos from the outside, or practically none, and we rarely ever sold an embryo to the outside, and because we felt that it would be diluting our genetics, so to speak, and it would limit us on the product that we were selling in the way of live cattle. And I think it worked very well for us, and I don't know whether Karen will approve of this, but we always said that we were not interested in whoring our genetics, and that would be by selling embryos throughout the world. And I understand that in this day and age, as people are paying a lot of money for these genomic indexes and so forth, that to raise cash flow, they've got to, I guess they have to sell embryos to maybe make their bank payments and whatever. But when everybody has the same thing, unless you've got something very exceptional, the rest of them are just going to be, they're going to be okay, but it's going to be hard to sell them all for a good price.
Great. Well, that'll lead us into the new change in your life, and I see that your son David has just come in the room, so if he could join us. As I mentioned before, we're in the office of Tara Hills Stud Farm, and can you tell us, number one, how you even came into the horse industry and what we're doing here?
Well, the standardbred industry, when I was going to college, I knew some people that were in it, and it kind of intrigued me, and I always thought that someday I would like to own a standardbred racehorse, or with myself or with somebody else and whatever. Unfortunately, I didn't have the money and I didn't have the time, because we went the way of the breeding Holstein cattle, and so that limited us for a long time. But in 1988, after we had a sale and so forth, I didn't think I was going to stay in the Holstein cattle at that point, and actually a friend of mine from Argentina, Guillermo Bullrich, who I still one of my best friends, and he had a friend that had a standardbred mare over here racing, and she wouldn't pass the test to go back to Argentina, and so he asked us if we'd be interested in taking her, and so I got a veterinary friend of mine, Dr. McCrae, and we took that mare. They delivered it from Florida up here, and we started racing her, and she won about $100,000 for us, and that was the first one. And then it kind of led from there, and the second year we had some real good success with some good horses, and the next thing you know, we were at one point we had over 100. So between mares and foals and yearlings and race horses, and we're back in numbers a little bit right now. David can tell you more about what we have exact numbers right now at this point, but probably more than we need. But anyway, and that was the beginning of it.
Yeah, David, could you expound on that a little bit?
It's just like in the cattle business, we can't get rid of anything. We race it, and then we bring it back on the farm, and then we make it a brood mare. They collect. But, anyway, right now we probably have, the farm has close to 100 head on the farm. About 70 of them I own or Peter and I own together, Dad and I own together. And our main business, well, is we're both stallions and selling. We do the same thing with the brood mares like we did with the mares themselves. We breed them to our stallions, get the foals on the ground, and then we sell them as yearlings as a cash crop. And so the business is about 50-50, 50% standing stallions for other people and getting lease agreements with them, and 50% of the income for the farm comes from selling the yearlings.
And like the dairy industry, do you flush horses? Can you export semen? What similarities are there?
There is some flushing. The only horses that pretty much get flushed are old mares and things like that they can't seem to get in foal or hold pregnancies. But it's not very common, and it's expensive, and there is a bit of people don't really like to purchase. Purchase out of those families, though there have been some successful ones and things like that. It's just not very common. And as far as we move a lot of semen. For one thing, we freeze semen on our trotters. We have both trotters and pacers, and our trotters we send semen over to Europe. And and then our stallions, we have we stand 12 stallions. Half of them, 6 of them are what we call dual hemisphere stallions. So they just left here, went into quarantine, and they go down and they go to New Zealand and Australia, and they breed down there during their half a season down there too. So they're working year round, and I've got one stallion that bred. He bred 220 down under last year and 235 here. So. It's over 450 bred. So.
Along the fact about the embryo transfer in the horse business, number one, the industry tends to don't make waves, and they're not. It's not new ideas are very slow to them. Like, we can only register one foal a year out of a mare. And so if you do an embryo transfer, you can only register supposedly the first one born. But so that's one of the problems. And of course, he did mention cost. They charge quite a bit more to do a mare. And we've used it sparingly. We had a good world champion mare that got a broken pelvic, and we used it and got a foal out of her by going with embryo transfer, because she couldn't have carried it. Now she is carrying her own now, but it's along with even frozen semen. They're very slow to accept frozen semen when they can get fresh chilled semen.
But another thing, you can't superovulate a horse either.
But quarter horses, for instance, we have some quarter horse stallions, a couple here for people. And so they can multi-ovulate a quarter horse, and they can register as many as they want in a quarter horse game.
So just like in the dairy industry, I'm sure a lot of your time is made up in marketing and promotion. And I know that you put together a really nice brochure. David, does that fall under your category of responsibilities?
No, we work with a company that helps put it together, but the advertising side of things, my father does all the proof and does all that. And
well,
that's
that's not totally true.
When the photographers come and things like that, we kind of I make suggestions how we wanted to have things done this year, and whether or not he agrees with all the changes, whatever else. We work together on it. It's a team effort, and I'll work with the photographers when they come. We do photography, 2 or 3 times a year here to get different shots and keep a big portfolio. And that's a lot of farms don't tend to do that or don't keep up with that, and that's a big part of our business.
But one of the more important parts all the time, as you're probably recognizing in your game, that the print advertisement for us is getting smaller, and website is getting bigger and more prominent. And David, like the CD part of it, he does pretty much that with who he works with. And
the farm has a CD, and then again this year we went to We'd had the same website pretty much for the last 6 or 7 years. We have somebody that updates it on a weekly basis, like anything, I mean, it's as current as what we have news for and things like that. And then we also gone to, which would be the first in the standardbred industry, we have what's called a virtual stable. So we parade each one of the stallions and show it, whether it's good or bad, whether or not you're going to see them and you're going to see what's good about them and you're going to see their faults and things like that. But I think for ourselves, it's not like in the cattle business where you have a proof and you can look at numbers and see feet and legs, whatever. Years ago, people used to go around and look at the stallions and take the time and travel around and make their decisions based on, confirmation is still a big part of it. So we want to be as honest as possible and have people look at the size of the horses and how they stand and everything like that, because it's very important how they stand and make sure they're going to get a correct standing horse. And then they'll make their decisions from there whether or not they want to breed to our horses or not. And this year it helped us. I think it really helped us out because we bred about 200 more mares this year than we did last year.
There's a couple of things that are woefully lacking in the standardbred industry. There's no classification program, which I think would be very important. And you can't seem to move them off center on that. And that would enhance. And the other is sire proof. They would have an excellent chance to do a sire proof, because there's very few trainers that have more than maybe one or two daughters or colts of a particular stallion. So your reliability could be high, because we'll say you had, just say you had 50 two-year-olds out there. They might be in 40 barns, 40 different trainers. And we have all the records of what their mothers, when they raced, if the mothers raced, we have the time and so forth, and you could do a thing sort of like fat-corrected milk and so forth to stabilize, to get some continuity to the proof. Because we have as many statistics as you do really in the dairy business in a lot of ways available through the computer age and whatever. We have all kinds. I mean, we can pull up pedigrees on any horse for 5-6 generations in a matter of a minute or two here for almost any horse we want. And any horse that raced last night, by 4 o'clock this morning, it'd be on the computer. You can get all the horses that raced last night, what they did, what their time was, everything, all they did. First quarter, last quarter, whether they were parked, whether they made a break, whatever they did, we would know the next morning on any horse in North America.
So are you involved in any organizations that can help make some changes in the equine industry?
Well, yeah, I was. And I was a board member of the Woodbine Entertainment for a while, and the Hamiltonian Society, and the Standardbred of Canada. And I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of patience when it comes to people knocking just batting their eyes and not really accomplishing. And after a while, I just said that, they just don't want it. They just don't want to do it. I mean, you could present all kinds of progressive ideas, and like they don't have any true type model, for instance. I mean, you do learn some things from the cattle business that apply to the standardbred business. And conformation, many of the things that make a good cow make a good horse. I mean, feet and legs, cleanliness of bone, hock, head and neck, depth of chest, width of rump. I mean, it's all in basically the same package, That's why classification could come into being, especially for potential brood mares and stallions going to stud, if people could utilize that. But they don't have the mental thought about it. It's not, that ain't the way we did it. So that's one thing where the dairy industry has far surpassed, is way ahead of the horse business when it comes to those kind of aspect of things.
And you were recently honored last fall, I think, at the Royal by the dairy industry, by your peers.
Well, be 2 years this November. I had the good fortune of being inducted into the Agricultural Hall of Fame, And then last
August.
I was inducted into the Racing Hall of Fame. So that was that was kind of unexpected in a way, but it was nice.
I think your peers appreciate you.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'd appreciate them more if they would just get a little more progressive and so forth. Because we see management factors, there's all kinds of things like foaling of foals and breeding. What we get done here, foaling, and what we get done here, breeding, out in the field. When we ship this semen out of here today, and it gets into other people's hands, the variety of management is so varied, especially with fresh chilled semen, that the pregnancy rates don't come up anywhere near close to us. And then the foaling rates and the number of foals that are born dead. For instance, if you have 100 pregnant mares, our statistics show that if we get, 55 to 60 live foals?
Well, actually, we just did the numbers. We're running around 65%.
65%, so it's up a bit. It was under 60 for a while. So some people are doing a better job, but still, so there's 40 foals for either absorption. Their husband and wife went to the movies and weren't there when the mare was foaling or whatever. 40, that's a lot of dollars, potential dollars that is being lost. Plus besides, when we sell the semen, we get paid on standing foals. So if there's 20 less, say, standing foals, say there would be 80% instead of 65, 15 more. Depending on the stallion, if he's a $10,000 stallion, there's quite a bit of money in that aspect of it. So environment and breeding is much the same as the cattle business. If you don't have the right people and do all the things that are needed to get them in foal and foal them out properly and whatever, that's the difference between making it and losing it, so to speak.
And it sounds like, similar to when you had cows, that one of your goals is just to make the next generation that much better than the previous generation. Is that right?
Oh, obviously. I mean, and if you just see what's happened, well, I've been in the game now just a little over 20 years, but the speeds that these horses are going now, it's like production proofs. I mean, their speed of these horses today, what would have been a world champion 10 years ago, today will hardly get a check at the same speed.
This business is a lot, and then I'm going to compare it into the dairy business. I mean, for us, we're working with smaller numbers, but it's tough to make it, like, even for ourselves. When you breed, you can breed a nice looking horse, but you sell it, and how we raise it and whatever else, if they don't get to the track, if they don't race, we're not going to be able to sell the following year or 2 years down the road, because people aren't going to come and buy from you. So, and it's tough to get a horse to the racetrack. It's very tough.
It's very fickle business.
Cows will always they're gonna calve out and they're gonna milk and make, whether or not they're gonna be a show champion or whatever, but they're at least gonna make milk and make you some money. Whereas the horses, if they don't race, they're not making you any money. Thus, we're not gonna make any money.
And the business is such, it's just like the cattle business. 2-year-old production of 2-year-olds, standardbreds racing or thoroughbreds, whatever. If they don't cut it as 2-year-olds, they may come on as 3-year-old, but that 2-year-old year it's so-called early sire proof, you might say, and it's the difference between. We had a stallion last year. They probably oversold, but they averaged, what did Jeremy judge, around 50,000. Yeah. The yearlings average. Well, everybody has great expectations. Well, it's almost impossible to meet that because everybody thinks they're going to be a world champion. Well, they're not all going to be world champions. And, they're starting out okay, but to equal what these people put them at, because they're great looking horses. But until they get out there and show what they can do, that's another matter. That's another matter and altogether. So, and the business has changed. It used to be a guy might breed to a stallion 2 years in a row or 3 years in a row. Now there's enough good well-bred stallions coming on stream that the first year is not usually a problem. The second year is getting to be a real problem now, much more so than it used to be even 5 years ago or 10. And the third year is really tough. So when you're buying or leasing a stallion, you have to realize that if you breed, well, he had let's say a stallion that bred say 200 mares this year.
But it's also, and what he's saying is true. It's hard to get them. They've got to really like the horse. But if the horse has been a champion, done well, you can still get people to breed to him. But in the standard bred, like in any kind of business, there's a price point, and so we have to meet that price point every year to get people to want to breed to them.
So one last question for you, and I asked you about your cows. What about in the horses? Most influential stallion, most influential mare?
Well, the most influence, well,
I mean,
David, yeah, but
go with what you mean for what he's owned and raced. I mean, or like have memories. Oh, I think you got to go with it that way. I mean, you got to look at.
Well, there's two. There's races. There was Precious Bunny
which started it
all, and was a horse of the year, etc. Made $2,200,000 and some thousand, and then we had a horse called Riyadh that made $2,700,000 and some thousand. Unfortunately, the semen wasn't much good. And then we had Pacific Rocket that made $2 million. What did he make? $2 million, whatever.
So I think you got to go along like those couple horses that gave them the start, and then if you go and look at brood mares, there's a couple that we've bred that have made over $1 million each, and then one that we bred and sold that went on and made a little over $3 million.
And she was horse of the year. She was the first mare to be horse of the year in 20-some years or 30 years.
Yeah, and she was by Precious Bunny. So so that.
But then Precious Delight was made $1.3 million. She was bred by us, and she was a Precious Bunny. And then we had Stylish Artist that's out of that family.
But an Arts Place line.
Yeah,
right.
Still,
but so I would think that those are probably the ones that would have to stick out.
But our stallions that we've got right now, Cadabra is one of the leading trotting stallions. Well, in Canada, arguably, he maybe is the leading stallion. And another horse we have here, Mach 3, who was a world champion pacer. He's one of the leading horses here in Canada right now. And
it's not one that we own, but one that
we leased him. But Cadabra we own a piece of. And he made $2 million. And Mach 3 made over $2 million.
We've been very fortunate. To have a lot of really good horses. I mean,
we've had
our stallion barn. When you look, and everything's pretty much made over $1 million standing in that line down there. And when you walk through, and you can see a barn, 12 horses valued at somewhere between $12 and $15 million. It's a big achievement for any farm to be able to do that.
Our percentage of proven stallions has been running pretty good considering the industry as tough as it is. I mean, there's some people in this game that are very, very wealthy people, and I mean we're small potatoes compared to those people, and so it's a real struggle for us to be able to get the kind of stallions we have and whatever, but in all fairness to David, he's built a very great clientele. He's been exceptional with his clients, and they like doing business with him. And we've been producing some product that they like.
And that's what's really kept us going, because what's different about our business than everybody else, we have 25 or 30 brood mares, where there's 5 larger farms that have well over 100 brood mares.
Some up to 400, 4
to 5, 600 even, and so. When you're looking to stand a stallion, you'll go and stand with those guys. And so, what's made our horses, I mean, we've had luck and produced a couple by each sire, but, you need numbers. And so, it's the clientele that really, makes it for you. And so, in the end of the day, that's really who we have to thank.
Well, good. I think whether it's Hanover Hill Holsteins or Tara Hill Stud, you can see that Pete Heffering and David Heffering still have an intense amount of passion for what they do. Passion for success. we thank you for taking time to be with us today and educate us on what you're doing and what the future holds.